Good morning, everybody. It's Brian Caprice from Keep Trading Simple, and today is Tuesday, the 15th. Can't believe it's the 15th already. We're here. This is our Tuesday trade talk. As you guys know, I just got back in town. I was in Vancouver, the lovely Vancouver, for a wedding over the weekend. Very interesting time. Amazing, amazing sights. The mountains up there are finally starting to get some snow on them, so definitely a little bit interesting. And then I come back and all the leaves are coming down here. So I think I prefer the snow and cold versus leaves. Just means more work. Well, anyway, we are second day of the week, so I'm going to kind of do our routine from Monday morning. I'm going to go through the news and what we should be looking for. Interesting week for news this week. It's actually a little bit on the shy side. We have a bunch of retail sales numbers, and I'll kind of dive into that. This week it should be interesting as well. We should hopefully get some finality, or maybe a little bit closer to finality on Brexit, which is obviously a very big deal. The news of the week last week obviously were quite large movers, especially on Friday. So definitely we'll see what we have this week and move from there. So before we get started though, let me just give you guys a bit of background for anybody that is new, and I'll keep this quick. I have a very different trading style. I'm a price action trader. I don't use indicators or rely upon indicators. I am very much about candlestick formation and how the buying and selling is actually occurring. I've been trading since about 2000, and I've tried many different methods out there. I started with stocks, options, got into Forex, dabbled in futures a little bit. I didn't like it as much, and then eventually obviously came over to the Nadex realm as well. So for me, I'm not one of those believers about spending 16 hours a day in front of a computer. I don't think that's the right way to do this. They're saying that, sitting now is considered the new cigarette. It's not healthy for us. So I'm a very big believer in technology. My trading style, if you guys see today, is very much an if this, then that type trading style. I'm not here saying where can I hit buy and sell. Like, I'm not one of those people. So you'll see in my analysis a bit that, I'm very much talking about zones of buying and selling. If it gets into those areas, I'll be looking for different types of positions, which again, it's a little bit different than some people are accustomed to. I have spent a number of years not only trading, but then also traveling around and teaching people how to trade. I did spend a little bit of time inside of the advisory division of one of the big three banks, and kind of got a different take on kind of looking at the markets and the way that people handle the markets. And it gives me a different, again, a little bit different of a kind of a different, a little opinion, because again, when you see it from the inside, it is very, very much different. And, we have a lot of preconceived notions about what we believe, but then when I got on the inside, I was like, oh, this is what it's really like. And then I was very gifted, very blessed that I got the opportunity to become friends with a lot of different market makers. Once I learned those market makers, they also told me what really is happening in the markets and how they basically do what they do. And definitely, again, so the if this then that trading really became, the bread and butter that I followed. Okay. Do take care of the little ones. The little one actually came with me. The baby is now 16 months, walking everywhere. She was the flower girl, and she did absolutely great. She tried to steal the wedding from the bride. She went up to the front and was spinning around and waving at people, and it was a pretty fun weekend. Lots and lots of pictures, and actually the boys were they were here home with mom. We were first across tournament next weekend with the team, so they stayed back and they dealt with the team, and I took the baby and went to Vancouver. So fun times all around. Let's dive into our risk disclaimers. Okay, Nadex risk disclaimer is trading on Nadex involves risk and may not be appropriate for all investors. Trading can be volatile, and investors risk losing the cost at the end of the transaction, including fees. The information presented within this presentation is for informational and education purposes only, and should not be considered an offer or solicitation to buy or sell any financial instrument on Nadex or elsewhere. Now, any trading decisions you make are solely your responsibility and at your own risk. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Nadex contracts are based on underlying asset classes, including Forex, stock index futures, and commodity futures. And Nadex is a registered trademark of the IG group. Basically, guys, this boils down to don't trade money that you can't risk losing. And again, everything that you do is solely your responsibility, meaning if I say I like an area, if you want to trade that area, it's entirely on you. All right? All right, so let's talk about the upcoming news for this week. Here's my top three. Again, last week they were all nice movers. It was great. Unfortunately, I was away for one of them that I've been waiting for a while, and it turned out to be an amazing news release. Now, these are not guaranteed movers, obviously. These are just ones that I feel have the most kind of bang for the buck. I feel that they have the greatest potential for movement, but it doesn't guarantee anything. A lot of this is, obviously a large move is dependent upon the forecast being different than the actual. And again, if it comes in exactly as expected, the market has already priced it in, and you tend not to have a market move. These three seem to be the ones that this week that have the highest chance of being, the forecast being incorrect and giving us a large mover. But it doesn't mean there's not other releases, and I'll cover those in a second as well. First one being the Aussie unemployment and unemployment rate and employment change. This is basically the non-farm for Australia. As I mentioned last week, we had one for Canada, and it was just crazy. They had dropped 0.2. The week before that, we had the United States version, and again, it dropped by 0.2, and the markets went crazy. So this week with Australia, I am particular. Actually, this is not AM. This should be PM. There we go. Should be PM. It's an unemployment, obviously a release at night because the Australian markets obviously are on different schedules than we are. I put that as our first one on Wednesday. Now going into Thursday, we have the retail sales numbers for the pound, or for for London, for Great Britain. Retail sales is one of the higher movers as well, especially when it comes in as unexpected. When it comes in as expected, it's not as good. It doesn't give us and provide us much movement. But obviously we can get a little bit out of it. We'll see how that goes. And that's obviously an early morning release for any West Coasters here, anybody overseas. I'll mention the pound a little bit more after this as I kind of do the overview for the week. Number 3 would be also on Wednesday. This would be U.S. retail sales. Get a little coffee there. Retail sales is important for the United States because obviously spending really matters in our economy. We talk about interest rates up, down, left, right, sideways. Maybe something more of an easing, but not calling it quantitative easing. And all of this revolves around really the economy and spending and GDP and growth. And a lot of it has to also do with inflation. So whenever we see inflation numbers or we see sales numbers about what's driving the economy, very, very important. And retail sales is one of those numbers. There is some Canadian news at the same time, but again, the retail sales number will kind of overtake it. So that's basically the top 3. We don't have our standard, Friday news this week. It's actually a very, very light week on news as far as, number of major releases, and I'll pull that in a second. So what I want to do, though, is let me pull Forex Factory in here. I'm going to pull this back a bit and continue to talk about the UK situation. So with the UK situation, you guys can see over on the right-hand side, this is really what, when you're looking at the news and the hottest stories, Brexit is obviously what's going to dominate the UK situation and anything currency related right now with the pound. And again, the pound, the pound yen, pound dollar, both Nadex tradable pairs. Again, you have one, Barnier saying that, the proposals are not enough. But then later on, he says that a deal is possible this week, right? And then below that, we have, lawmakers that it's, they're not quite sure a deal is close, but I mean, it could still happen. And then that talks about the UK is not putting up any fresh proposals because, they're deadlocked, and again, they're going to really focus on it this week, and then again we bump into some other stuff. But as you can see, Brexit is going to be the big piece of it. The markets will just be dominated by it. And again, this GDP violates March downtrend, cautiously bullish. Again, because things are getting done and we're getting a bit more certainty, things are returning to that pair. So I'll cover that pair. We're going to break that one down. But overall, I think the pound is something that we need to watch out for, especially pound strength. Once they kind of, for lack of a better thing, once they get their act together, I think it's going to be something a bit more that we need to be focusing on, being bullish in that pair. All right. So looking at news for the week, okay, I had this here. Let me pull it over there. There we go. And as you guys can see, over the last 24 hours, the pound dollar is up 90 and the pound yen is up 112. Okay, everything else is more or less flat, right? But again, we're seeing a lot of pound strength coming in. So as you can see, as of, again, Tuesday, Monday's obviously not on here anymore, but you can see we had some, data this morning early, but not a whole lot besides that. Tonight we do have New Zealand CPI, which again, CPI is typically a good number to trade, but we don't trade New Zealand pairs with Nadex, so that's just something to be watching out for. But tomorrow morning there is actually CPI data early on the 16th. Actually, you know what? That's probably what I was supposed to be. Oh, it's there over there. So again, 2 mornings in a row, you have CPI data, which again, inflation is a big number when you're talking about interest rates. It's actually supposed to tick up a little bit from prior. So that could also be a very good mover if you're up. And then tomorrow morning at 8:30, we have CAD CPI. Again, this one is also supposed to be going down, which again, that's a good number, obviously for currency. So we'll see, what this provides, if this kind of gives us any type of bounce back. The CAD recently has really needed some type of news to drive it, and you'll be able to see that in the charts. But again, remember that this is also kind of balanced with retail sales. So predominantly, if this comes in, if the core retail sales and retail sales numbers for the U.S. comes in exactly as expected, then the CAD can be a mover. But a lot of times the U.S. data is going to it's going to overshadow what the Canadian news is. If you're a pure currency person, then obviously you could trade just this, you could trade the CAD yen, but for the most part, this data right here is going to be what kind of dominates that 8:30 news release. This should be interesting too. This 9 a.m. Carney speaking. I don't think he's going to release and say, hey, guess what? We just figured Brexit out or anything like that. He's not going to be the one that releases that. But I do believe after the CPI data, after the CPI from early morning, I think he'll talk about inflation and potential, what's going on with the rates. Anytime that he speaks at 9 at the end of their day, there can be some fireworks. Okay, so again, just watch your positions. If you are in something that is pound related, obviously you want to protect yourself at that point. He could say nothing, or he could make a big statement, and that's what you want to watch out for. You don't want to have a position on and have it completely come back and get you. All right, and then again, 8:30 p.m. I changed on the slide. 8:30 p.m. is where we see the big news. They're not expecting any change, but they didn't expect any change in Canada or the U.S. either, and both of them had great drops. I'm not saying that there's going to be a big drop in this one. I'm just saying that the potential is obviously there for large movement, and with an 8:30 p.m. release at night, there's no one else trading. Okay, so any type of big number or any type of miss tends to be exaggerated. We could have a 40 pip movement in a matter of minutes. Okay, continuing especially into the overnights. So definitely something to watch out for. Going to Thursday. Okay, that's where we have the retail sales number for the pound. And again, as I mentioned, it's going to be dominated this week by Brexit, but something like retail sales is a big number that you also can't just ignore. All right, so make sure you're watching that one. Going in a little bit later, again, Philly Fed Index, it's considered a major market mover, but I mean, yes, it is a manufacturing number. You do have to watch out for it, but it is one of the numbers that's kind of on the lower side. I personally don't follow it as much, but it doesn't mean that it's not a high impact news release. So again, kind of watch out for that one. Thursday this week, obviously, is when you're going to see the crude oil inventories. 11 a.m. Normally it's Wednesday, but this week it is on Thursday. Again, we are picked to have obviously a surplus as well. We've been keeping that. As you guys can see last week, again, we continued with the surplus trend. They kept going low, and this week they're finally saying, okay, fine, we're going to put it in at 3. Interesting how this one works off, or has been working out. Obviously, those drone strikes. My joke now with my group is that they were alleged drone strikes, that they didn't actually happen. Because when production went offline, you would have expected that all these prices would, the surpluses would not have been rising, and surpluses have been rising since the drone strikes. So, again, if you're not trading oil, again, you can potentially obviously trade in the futures market, although it's the wild west over there. If you're not looking at the commodities tab on your Nadex platform, go over there and check it out. You can definitely trade oil over there, and it's actually it's a great way to play it, right? Especially if you're new to trading oil. So make sure you check that one out. China GDP as well is late. Again, it's not going to move too much. And you can see on Friday, basically everybody's off for the weekend early, right? They are outie. There is no news on Friday this week. And then we go back and roll into next Monday of next week. So that's news for the week. Let's go back into, let's pull into some charts now at this point. Bring that over there. All right. So as you can see, I have a bunch of different lines on here and they're for different things from different time frames. So I'm just going to kind of run through the pairs that we can trade for Nadex. That makes the most sense. Now, I want you guys to get a kind of an overall view of a couple different pairs here. Let's see, bring this up over. Hold on, I close a window artificially down here. All right, it's gonna load up. I'm trying to match. Let's see, let's match this up right here. All right, there we go. All right, so with the Aussie, obviously, there's going to be 2 different pairs you can trade: the Aussie yen, Aussie dollar. All right. Now, Aussie popped off of an area of sellers last week. Okay, we talked about that before. We had this dotted purple line, and it actually pushed all the way up into the very, very bottom of kind of the selling zone. So it did go high, and again, this number, you guys can see it here. This ended up hitting on Friday. This was that number that we talked about, has done nothing but kind of crash back and kind of pulled back down again. So where we are now in this pair, you guys can see, I'm going to stretch this out so you guys can see it. We have an area of basing right in here. Obviously, it wasn't marked off or anything with me being gone, but there's an area of basing, and we've kind of hit it one time and bounced back up again. It grabbed some more sellers and used that to kind of propel itself down yesterday. All right, now it is sitting right on top of that zone, as you guys can see. For those of you new to these charts, the upper left-hand chart is the daily. On the right-hand side, the top right is the 4-hour, and then the 30-minute is on the bottom. Okay. As you can see on the 30-minute over here, it's literally kind of resting right on that same zone where it ran into buyers before. So it's kind of an interesting situation. I don't know that I'd be looking to take longs right now. I just feel that there's really not enough kind of potential right now and this morning with news releases that we'd be looking to take this long. Obviously, it is going to follow the overall U.S. market, but tonight when we have that, these nighttime news releases, this is a really great one to play. Okay, this is where we're kind of seeing this movement back and forth. And as mentioned before, let's see, for the Aussie, tonight there is nothing, although I will say this, okay, tonight there is that New Zealand CPI. New Zealand data also has the ability and power to move the Australian market, okay? Because their economies are linked so much together, a lot of times you'll see Aussie move New Zealand and New Zealand move Aussie, and you guys will see it here. This 5:45 New Zealand time, we could potentially get some movement in the Aussie, basically the Aussie yen, Aussie dollar from this news release. So again, just keep that, there. It happens. Whether it's going to happen this week, again, I don't know. But one thing I'm kind of watching for is this potential zone here, and this zone is basically from what 73.06 down to 72.88. I'm going to see what's going to happen next time we push into this zone. Obviously, as you can see now, hasn't even gotten down there. It's kind of bounced even a little bit early before they hit that zone. Two ways to play this one is you could potentially play this on the way out the other side. Again, refine this zone down a bit. And we could potentially you could do that. You do it down to there. I'd probably leave that in there. Probably do that. Move it there. Okay, you guys can see this is what we've been kind of respecting on the downside. Actually, I would have to put it a little bit higher. I would have to go to right there. Okay. So we have the potential of kind of pushing through the bottom, or if we see some type of a base and then a confirmation of candle patterns to the top side, that could be the launch off point of going back up. Okay. Primarily, what I'm most likely going to be focusing on this one is if we are in this area when any of the news releases happen, it's going to kind of change my opinion of where I think things are going to go. I will most likely be, more bullish if we are in that zone, if we push down into that zone just in time for news. Okay, not tonight, not the New Zealand news, but for tomorrow night. Actually, what is it? It's on Thursday. If we're inside of this zone on Thursday, then again, I'm going to probably be looking, more bullish at this point. And again, even if it bounces one time and it comes down, I'll be looking for it later in the week. Besides that, it's just a bit too choppy right now. Looking at 4-hour, this large wick here is kind of messing up this little sell zone. But again, the zone at the top, the 73, 75 is still a valid sell zone from the top side. All right, so just keep that marked off. Looking at little brother over here, the Aussie dollar. Again, Aussie dollar hasn't, the chart's a little bit different. On the daily, you can see that we've kind of got some, we got some pushes. We ran into that daily zone of sellers and kind of pushed back down again. Kind of the same pattern, right? You guys can see this is Friday at the same exact time for that news release. It really set this on, and again, this is one of the news releases from last week. Dropped this all the way back down again, and we're sitting in that level of basing, right? This pop, sideways, pop. It's sitting in the pop, same exact place. Kind of the same analysis, right? I mean, we are sitting in that same buy zone right now. Willing to take it? I don't know. Don't really love it right where we are right now. Again, we are still in that uptrend setup, right? We've driven past the prior move and it had pulled back a little bit. Now it has gone deeper than most people had thought, but not necessarily surprising because the last big push came all the way down to this bottom section. So we are in an area of buyers, but it is in an uptrend. So, what I would do is look on lower time frames for any type of confirmation that we are continuing to push back up again. Same scenario. This large kind of wick back up, grab these candles on the last time. You could potentially be looking forward to go back up into that same area. First profit target or potential profit target would be 67.75, and then again, obviously the break of this prior wick here. I think this one for the most part, I think it's going to start getting really slow right now. Obviously, Australia is not really doing much. There's really not a whole lot of U.S. news today. You have two FOMC members speaking, one at 12:45 and one at 3:25, which is kind of late in the day. Neither of them are huge movers. Again, without any, obviously U.S. money will come in this morning. and react a bit to things from overnight. But for the most part, I don't think we're going to see a lot of huge movement in this one. I think this one will be more of a kind of, let's see where we are tomorrow for core retail sales, because core retail sales obviously will, it will have an effect on this pair, okay? And then by proxy, the Aussie yen as well. Tomorrow morning will also have that, that popping potential, because good US retail sales numbers and core retail sales numbers will move the overall stock market, which will affect the yen, which will affect the Aussie yen, as well as the Aussie dollar, okay? So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. All right, going over into the next pair, let's look at euro pound. So look at that movement. You can see all kinds of movement happen here, right? And this was back on last Thursday. What was this news? This was Brexit news. Okay, so this is kind of what you have to prepare for right now with Brexit. Any type of confirmation or any type of, I think this is looking good or anything, is going to move this pair all over the place, okay? Areas that I'm watching out for are especially up in this zone right here. If you guys see, we have this bit of from here from 88.70 down to really 88.30. That's been a lot of time there. I mean, look, large push down, sideways for 4, and then bam, large push all the way back down again. So just an area that you want to keep kind of marked off, looking for any type of a pop up into that zone. That could be a possible turning point to the downside. Now, as far as targets where I'm willing to get long this pair, answer is I'm really not right now. I thought the pound had gotten way too beat up for what was actually happening. Like, not that much had changed, and it'd been getting beat up a lot. So for me, I really don't have any potential areas of kind of buyers that I'm looking for right now. I'm really just looking for pullbacks to continue to get short this pair. But again, like I said, if you have to figure out of which between the euro and the pound, which one is stronger right now, obviously the answer should be the pound. So if you're taking any dollar weakness positions, the pound dollar will tend to be the one that will move a little bit more in your direction and give you a little bit more of a profitable scenario. Again, if it's a dollar weakness trade, that's where you want to go. If it's a dollar strength trade, then why go against the stronger of these two pairs if they look more or less the same? Okay, if you guys are familiar with currencies, euro dollar currency pair and pound dollar currency pair basically do the same thing. They're almost, they're very, very close mirrors in shape. And that's where you can use this euro pound if you're unfamiliar with trading it. Okay. So yeah, I'm just looking for pullbacks at this point in this one, and again, waiting for some type of, yay or nay with Brexit. What I'd like to see as well with the news of this one is someone to say, "Oh, nothing's going to happen." We got 3 days. As you guys saw when we looked at the news, right? What do we see over in the news? All right, this guy over here says these proposals are not enough, but hours before that he said, "Well, something's possible." Okay. Well, I mean, there's still technically time, right? I'm not sure a deal is close, right? 3 hours ago, then 4 hours ago. He said, oh, look, it's possible this week. And they said, oh, they're not enough. But it doesn't mean tomorrow that it can suddenly be enough. As you can see, one person can really kind of change his opinion. It kind of be swirled back and forth. That's what's going to start moving this and make the volatility just a bit crazy. All right, so that's what you got to watch out for. So just be cautious of that one. Going over to euro yen. As you can see, euro yen has been, again, large push up, got into the area where we wanted to sell, and then it's really just kind of gone flat on us, right? Pushed up, pulled back, kind of went over again, and it just flatlined. So I am more bearish in this position right now. I'm looking for some of an entry. As I said, when I was traveling, I wasn't looking for any, obviously was not trading when I was on an airplane. But for me right now, looking for any type of kind of signals, or again, it's probably going to coincide with news a bit. Trying to figure out where, or when I can actually get long in this one. We do have lower highs, and again, lower highs, and we're basically right a little tiny bit lower than the low here, but any type of this candle turns red or starts to push down at all, then we are definitely without a question, that's 2 lower highs and 2 lower lows. That's the confirmation of the, basically one of the definitions of a, a trend reversal or a downtrend, okay? Now, areas where I think we'll have trouble to the downside, obviously, this was marked off from this prior zone here that got launched through and then used as a takeoff point. Again, this was that momentum breakout that I was talking about. That same area that will probably hold true, maybe a little bit higher, 118.83 down to 118.66. Keep that as a potential area where we may see some buyers step into it. Yes, it did get violated, but it was the takeoff point. It came back down and retested. It went through. You guys can see it came up, went down, and then kind of launched back through it. So just keep that on your radar. This one, I am not as much of a fan as some of the other ones. I like the euro dollar or the pound dollar. The euro yen is me personally, I kind of have like a love-hate relationship with it. Some days you can really find great trades on it. Other days it's kind of, you're not really finding a whole lot here, right? You're getting a lot of these pullbacks, breaking your zone and then launching through it. But again, that's been this push up. Besides that, it just was a little bit low. Okay, so the last week was a good one for this pair. Okay, going to euro dollar. Now, euro dollar is something I spent a lot more time on. All right, as you can see, euro dollar was really kind of getting really, really flat, came down, retested off of that area, and pushed back again. So last week we were talking about this one, talking about how we're kind of between this kind of a rock and a hard place, right? Again, you guys can see on the 30-minute, we were really bouncing, bounce, back, kind of got lower. And then what we did is we used that same level, this kind of the upper range of the channel here, right? It all of a sudden became the new base. Okay, we popped through and then boom, bounce, pop, and then came almost all the way back down again. And now we're back to that same area again. So really this range between, 110.40 and 109.90 has really acted as a magnet, really that 110 level. And again, 110 is a significant level in this pair. As soon as people hit that 110 range, everybody wants to start talking about, are we going to parity? Are we going to parity? Are we going to parity? So definitely a big deal, obviously with the numbers. Again, where we are now, let's see, get that start in the right shape. Not as pretty as the other one, but as you can see, we have a lower high and we have lower lows. Okay, this one is obviously definitely a confirmed level low, but it is at a level of basing. So again, this one is going to depend on really the U.S. data to drive it. The Europeans did a little bit with it in the overnight when the U.S. traders were not there over the last 5-6 hours. But at this point, we're going to see U.S. traders step into it, and we'll figure out if dollar strength is going to be the name of the game, or if dollar weakness is going to be the name of the game. Right now, the European traders, they're basically making the dollar strong right now, making the euro a little bit weaker. We'll have to see what the early morning trend is going to be, and that's probably what's going to happen for the rest of the day. We'll see once the U.S. market opens. Okay. Jumping across over to, let's see, pound dollar. There we go. So pound dollar, whoa, it's the explosion. Same thing from last week on Friday, right? This is Thursday going into Friday. You can see this one was basically launched up, okay, right here on this one, Thursday and Friday. This was that Brexit news we talked about. And since that time, it really hasn't done much. You guys can see it really just kind of based sideways, right? It did pull back a little bit into an area of basing and then kind of rally to see if it can grab, make another attempt. It's easier to see on the 30-minute. You guys can see lots of movement, bam, here. So there was a Sunday night gap play in this one. For those of you that have heard me talk about Sunday nights and kind of the gap opportunities that exist, there was a Sunday night gap play in this one, and it was more or less textbook. Since that time, it really has done nothing but pull right back up to where we were on Friday. So yes, it is Tuesday, and it hasn't done much. But as I said, this pair this week is going to be hinging on every single news release we see as far as what Brexit goes. Later in the week, that retail sales number will give us some movement as well. And that'll give us some true movement, some nice bouncing. It just won't be speculation. But again, be cautious with any pair that you are in during normal working hours in the UK, because that's when people are going to launch those, Brexit this, Brexit that. And remember, we are basically within 2 weeks right now, okay? 2 weeks is going to be the biggie, right? That's the actual deadline for what you're looking for as far as Brexit goes, okay? I don't personally think, and again, this weekend I had the luxury of talking to someone who works in the banks in the UK, family member. They also don't believe. I asked them because I was like, listen, I want to get the UK opinion on it. What do you think about this? Because I've been following as well. And they actually don't think anything will get kind of figured out until the last possible minute. There's just too much time to negotiate and change things around until that last possible deadline. So they also believe that they're going to wait to that. And again, it's not an inside source, it's just someone that works in the banks that lives in the UK that is obviously a little bit more familiar and has different news sources than we have, living in another country. And they believe it's going to, they're not, as a citizen over there, they believe that it's going to take until the last minute as well. And that's kind of what I've been thinking, that they're literally going to wait until the last moment in time. So anything we see this week, any type of agreements, this is just the calm before the big bang. Okay. Now, just looking at this on a technical basis, I have to say that I am a little bit more bearish. Again, we have had the flip. We have lower highs in here. We have one lower low established. You're not really seeing anything too strong. It's made 2 valid attempts up. It did have a good turn and push away, and we just ran into that same area again. So It has had a failure to go higher situation, which I do absolutely love to take to the downside. If we can kind of put a little bit, if we can break just a little bit lower, I could potentially be looking for shorts this morning for a shorter term position to the downside. Okay. Now, one thing as well, for those of you that know the parabolic retracement webinar that I did for Nadex a few weeks ago, we are doing another one, and people will see this and say, wait a second, isn't this a parabolic retracement? No, this is a little bit different because it's not an economical news release. Brexit is something that is a huge fundamental change, and those are a little bit different. So any of you that kind of watched that webinar and were wondering about that one, about why isn't this one traced back again, it's because it's a different type of news release and it doesn't qualify for a parabolic retracement, just for anybody that was wondering on that one. I had somebody shoot me a message and say, hey, isn't it supposed to come back? If it was anything else besides Brexit, yes, but this is not. Obviously, Brexit is its own little kind of animal that you guys need to be cautious of. All right, now here's the pound dollar. 3 years of messing around. Yeah, Steve, that's a good way to say it, right? 3 years of messing around. I mean, 3 years ago when it first all came out, I mean, the charts were, I mean, even this spring, right? We talked about this spring. I mean, it was literally, it was like 200 pips up one day and then 200 pips down the next day. I mean, it's been great to trade, right? I mean, it's been fun to trade. And then it did like nothing for such a long time that it was like, it was like watching paint dry. So, I mean, it is pretty exciting that you're seeing that movement. And again, this chart looks almost exactly the same, right? What'd you do? You had this big pop up, right? You had kind of a failure to go higher situation. You had the same type of, Sunday night gap play in this one. So it's more or less exactly the same. Okay, in this case, it's the mirror. And again, you see huge movement up like this. They are parabolic candles. Where's the retrace? Yeah, it's because it's Brexit. It's a fundamental change. It's something that is very big. Now, this one is a little bit cleaner. So any type of short position that you guys are thinking about getting into, again, your trade, you took it. It's solely on you. One area that I'd watch out for, though, for me, it would be this area. Okay, but this was a very, very nice base. It popped, and then again, what did it do? It came back and retested that base and went sideways. So just be a bit cautious inside of this. Was it 124.50 to 124, really 20, right? This 30 pip range in here. That basing definitely signifies that something was going on. You guys can see here. It spent a lot of time there before it took off again. Okay, it's kind of like news and news. But just be a bit, cautious with that one. But I do like, again, it's the analysis is very, very similar. Okay, price pushed down. It was unable to go any higher. It didn't make it as high. We do have descending wicks at the top of these candles, meaning that there are sellers sitting up there or potential sellers sitting up there. Yeah, so we'll see. Now again, this is the same idea. This one does not have the same reaction. So remember we talked before. I mentioned on the euro pound chart that we had pound strength, and that anything dollar strength, you'd want to be going against the weaker ones, right? What do we see in the euro dollar pair? We saw that this was pushing much farther down, right? Okay, in this one, what do we see the same movement? We don't, right? We see a little bit of movement, but really not the same, right? The euro was already pushed down here, right? It was already pushed down at the lows because it was the weaker of the two currency pairs. So again, this kind of backs up, what I talked about the euro pound being, it's definitely a pound stronger environment. Yes, the pound is fighting the dollar a lot more than the euro is right now. Okay, so that's why I think it'll be very interesting when the U.S. traders come online, because we'll really get to see where, what the U.S. wants to do with the dollar today. Is it going to be a king dollar today, or are we going to let it be weak? Okay. Jumping across now, let's go down to the next one, which would be dollar CAD, which is right here. Dollar CAD is interesting. So dollar CAD is like kind of one of those like feast or famine trades. It either does nothing or it's been great. Okay, you guys can see it spent all this time just slow, up, down, and then bam, we had this kind of movement here from Wednesday. And again, that was the unemployment data, okay, the non-farm data. It went up, it came all the way across, and bam, it retraced back down again. So it did what it was supposed to do. It did take some time. It did give us a lot of different fake outs on this one. Actually, the unemployment data was here on Friday. Okay, this was the push back down again. Again, hit the profit, the profit target we talked about, literally hit it right, went right through the bottom and now has retraced back up. So as you can see, since that kind of retracement happened, again, that happened into Monday, it really hasn't done much. Here's 9 a.m., on Monday, 7 a.m., it just stayed in the same exact spot. We have absolutely no movement. There's really been no catalyst for this pair. Looking into the rest of this week, things that you should watch out for CAD, obviously Wednesday morning we have CPI data. Again, it is the one that is kind of shackled with the retail sales numbers for the United States. So be cautious of that one. Oil, again, is a way that you can play this one. That one has been pushed back to Thursday this week at 11. Okay, so Couple different things there. There is some manufacturing data on this later in the week, although again, it's coupled with US data, and then obviously nothing Friday. So this one, unfortunately, does not have as many catalysts this week to trade. It is what it is. Again, as I mentioned before, it's a feast or famine. It's whether you got some really great setups or some really just kind of like, eh. And this week, it's kind of one of those, there's really not a whole lot sitting there. Areas to watch out for in the 4 hour, though, obviously up near this purple line, 132.90 is going to be an area of potential sellers. We've already seen price come up to it one time, and that's where the initial kind of push and this launch came from. You can see it right here, okay? Downside as well, definitely mark this lower section off. I'd mark off a box, probably. Again, I'd refine this a little bit lower, but looking in here from what 131.96 down to 131.72. Okay, just somewhere again we have to dial that down a little bit lower in the lower time frame, but that's a potential area on the downside that I'd be looking for buyers to potentially step in. All right, so just watch out for them. Going across, looking at dollar Swiss. Oh, go ahead, you can load. There we go. All right, so you can see dollar Swiss, it pulled up into a buying zone. It actually broke right through the top side of it, just by a little bit. It didn't actually go as high as this here from Wednesday, but again, on Friday, it did push up again. You could say it's a failure to go a higher situation, although it didn't spend a lot of time there on Wednesday because of news. Started the base a little bit, and then you can see this one got really, really slow, really, really fast, okay? Basically, for Monday, you guys can see it stayed inside of a very, very tiny trading range. No real Sunday, Sunday happened right here, okay? No Sunday gap situation whatsoever. Again, a little bit of pullback, but as of 5 o'clock, or what is it, 7 o'clock yesterday morning, no movement. It's been pretty flat, little tiny pop this morning, and then again, it pulled right back. So for me, again, geopolitical based pair, don't see a lot on this one going on right now. We are at the top end of the range though. So I am, because of that, I am obviously a little bit more bearish minded in this one. But right now, I don't even really necessarily have a setup or anything that I could potentially be looking for as a short area. Small things on the 30-minute, but this area up top is just really not the best right now on the 4 hour. Whoops, hold on. Wait, I got out of order. Hold on, that's the CAD Swiss. You guys can't trade the CAD Swiss on Nadex. But it's the same analysis. You'll see. Hold on. See the same thing. See the same level. We had that one pop down, and it's been in the same exact area. Okay. Again, it's not a pair that I focus on a lot, especially when I'm traveling. But you guys can see same thing. Sideways movement, had a little bit of that pop up and down was again the CAD news last week. Same situation where it's flat. Okay. So again, for me, top side really not a lot. Bottom side really not a lot either. This one has actually spent even more time than the CAD Swiss in the same area. All right. All right. So again, yeah, this one is all messed up. I had this one over here. See this? It's so funny, Sean. This is what happens when you have a laptop that you trade on and the workspace is not exactly the same. The order's out of space, and I'm clicking all over the place. That and the jet lag is real, obviously. Yeah, but it's no different. The analysis is the same. The Swiss by itself is flat. Doesn't matter if we match it against the CAD or if we match it against the US dollar. It's exactly the same. Okay, they're both flat. And then last but not least, we'd have the dollar yen. Okay, obviously the dollar yen. Let's see, over the last 24 hours, as that is loading, dollar yen is up 10 pips in 24 hours. So obviously it is also a rather flat pair, right? You guys can see it over here, right? Not a whole lot of movement in it. Again, didn't necessarily expect it to be a lot on a Monday with really not a lot of news. This one will have different periods this week where we will have some movement. Obviously tomorrow morning with US sales, that's going to be a big one at 8:30 in the morning. For FOMC members, it's probably not going to be big. Evans is not going to move it. Going into Thursday, and the Philly Fed index may actually affect it a bit more because that's going to affect the overall indices for any of my indices traders out there. That's definitely something that will give them a little bit of catalyst to kind of move around. Oil's not going to move this one too much, and again, Friday with no news, it's probably going to be a bit slow going into the weekend. Now we are at the higher range here on the daily. You guys can see. Okay, we've watched it bounce off this area a few times, although this is the third attempt through. Ultimately, I'm still looking for kind of selling up in this 109.12 range, but we got about 80 pips before we can get there. So it's not quite up to a range where I'm looking to start selling this. And even the pullbacks are kind of like, yeah, you got a level of basing right here. Again, this is for the breakout, right? This was the breakout we were looking for last week for it. It's kind of wedged in, right? I mean, we see some buyers here. We got some sellers up top, but none of them are really that strong. So
It's kind of like a wait and see pair for me. I definitely like some of the other trading opportunities better right now for this one. And again, this is this is one of those pairs that can go, spend some time sideways, as you guys can see here. Look, you can see, there's your Sunday, there's your Monday, and we have nothing, right? I mean, the open and close is basically exactly the same for almost 3 days. Last week provided some great movement, and we retraced this kind of early, the prior week drop, and then retraced back up again, and now we're stuck. So definitely overall in the daily, I'm more bearish in this position, again, being at the top range here. But right now, there's nothing that's showing to me that we're actually in a trending market. We are just purely in a sideways market, okay? So just watch out for that one, all right? Trying to see if there's anything else to cover on this one. Probably not. Again, oil this week, I would cover oil today, but oil's been bumped back to Thursday this week due to the week, so I'm not going to cover that because there's a little bit too much time in there. So guys, with that being said, that's pretty much it for this week. Like I said, brain's a little bit foggy. Gave you guys some extra charts. If you guys are currency traders, dive over there and look at those on the currency charts. But again, at the end of the day, those things don't change. They're the Swiss is the Swiss. It's not really moving. It's not really trending or anything. It doesn't matter what chart we pair it to. Don't forget, for the rest of the week, look at your euro pounds. Use that to determine which one is stronger of those two, and then trade it appropriately over on the euro dollar or the pound dollar. Obviously, this week you guys can see it. If you need a lesson in currencies, look at the euro pound and then the euro dollar pound dollar, and look at the pound strength and versus the euro weakness right now with the dollar. But again, that can all change as soon as the U.S. traders come online, and we'll determine whether or not they want the dollar to continue to be strong this morning, or if they want to bring dollar weakness back into the fray. Okay. All right, guys. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any other questions, like I said, you guys can reach us at our normal places. You can go onto the website. You can email me. That's probably the easiest, support@keeptradingsimple.com. I will be playing catch up today, so if anybody does email in, give me a little bit of extra time today. Being on for 5 days can set you back. We do have our nightly broadcast. I will be back on tonight, loaded up on coffee, as well as you can check Instagram as well. All right. So thank you guys so much for joining. I will catch you guys next week on Monday morning. We'll be well rested, and hopefully I have a voice. We have our first lacrosse tournament, but we will see how that goes. All right, everybody, you guys take care and have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week.